Great. Okay. So this is week 5. Well, it's actually week 6. It's module 5 of the class, Unbridled Accountability and Support. So first of all, I just want to say congratulations. Whew, right? So you just finished 6 intense weeks, and of what I hope actually could be a life-changing course for you. Life-changing doesn't have to be split-second life-changing, right? But I've watched each of you dig in and do really a lot of excellent introspection over these past weeks. And what you have in this course is the foundational knowledge and understanding that you need to be able to move through your life differently, or begin moving through your life differently, thanks to boundaries. Now, again, it doesn't all happen magically. Mary knows she's been working on this for quite a while, but over the years, I have watched some really big changes in you. And I know sometimes you still feel like you have a long way to go, but you really have come a long way from where you were. Yeah, for sure.
I'm a slow learner.
No, you're not a slow learner, actually. It's just some of the patterns have been pretty deep and ingrained, right?
Yeah.
And those really they take a really long time sometimes, and just a lot of intentional effort. And if we're not being really intentional and sometimes having the support we need, we fall back into those patterns pretty easily. So that's not a failure. It's just, it's going to happen, right? And each time we decide we're going to break those patterns, or get better at breaking them, we come in with even more determination for it and a little more skill, right?
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing cycle. Yeah. So as we were just saying, big changes in your life and in your relationships aren't going to happen automatically. They don't happen super quick. And a big part of shifting those patterns, honestly, is shifting the self-talk and the
Yes.
relationships that we have with ourselves. So we're trying to shift things in our relationships with other people, but the thing that we have to shift and stay committed to shifting is the patterns with ourselves. And those are where the patterns are really super deep. And those are the things that make it hard for us to create big shifts in our outer world, because those inner gremlins, self-talk, mind things, patterns, all of those are just, they're our friends. We have to make friends with them, and they're with us for life, honestly. So we've got to learn how to be in relationship with them and not just resent them, and not just wish that they'd go away or that we're different. Over time, the more in relationship with them that we are, the more we're assertive and not aggressive or passive aggressive with the voices in our head, even in our own self. We can learn to have pretty harmonious relationships with that as well, but it does take a lot of intentional effort. So one of the things that I hope this class, this like 6 weeks of us being together, has helped you see is that working on this really hard stuff is a lot more, I don't know if I want to call it fun, but it is a lot more motivational and a lot easier when we do it in community, when we're doing
Yes.
it. Like, for sure, it's better than doing it alone, right? And sometimes it's fun, but it's still hard, but it's definitely, so I'm going to continue to keep offering more things, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end, because this is extremely hard work to do by yourself in isolation. It's much easier if we have a community that we feel safe with. So whether you continue working with me and engaging in communities that I host and facilitate around this, or maybe you find like-minded and like-hearted community in other places, that's great too. Like, it doesn't have to be just with me, but definitely I strongly encourage you to find ways to surround yourself, if not constantly, at least for periods of time, with other people who are actively working to improve their relationships with themselves and with other people. And it's helpful if they at least have a basic understanding about boundaries, because I'm not really sure how you do that work effectively without really understanding a lot of the stuff that you've been diving into over the last 6 weeks. And so that you can have, if you're talking to other people, you know that you at least both have a baseline understanding that this is a thing, assertive versus aggressive communication, and have some idea what the difference is, so you can like flesh that out with other people. Um, so slowly work on finding other people in your community. And again, I've had this talk with a lot of people that I have as clients and students who feel like, well, I should have these people in my life without having to enroll in a class or be part of a membership program or something like that. There's no should or would about it, right? We all have who we have in our lives. We have who we have accessible to us, and a community that you pay for or that you're a student in or a class in isn't any less valuable and often way more valuable than people that are just in your life generally. So it's not this thing of like, I just don't have anyone in my life that's that way. It's our responsibility to find environments and situations where there are people who are working on these things and taking this stuff seriously too. So that's part of what's our responsibility. It doesn't matter to me where you find it. Just don't go it alone if you're struggling. Like there are resources around for people. So that's my soapbox for today. And let's see. As I said, you're going to continue to need and want support on your journey, and it's a lifelong journey. So build your herd. Stay in touch with each other from this class if you want to. Definitely stay in touch with me if you want to. And in the course completion section of the course, which is like the very last piece of it, I did mention a few ways that you can stay engaged with me, but I'm actually going to talk about some others before we get off the call today that I kind of have in the works or I'm thinking about, and get your feedback on those too. But we'll touch on that at the end. So first, I want to dig in a little more to Module 5. Here comes Colleen. Let me let her in. Yay. Okay. So,
Sorry.
hey, Colleen. Glad you're here. Okay. Just missed the intro, really. You can go back and listen to that if you want to, but we're just diving into Module 5 now. And I think that the biggest thing that I want you to take away from this module was actually in the last sentence from the quote at the beginning from Marshall Rosenberg and the book Nonviolent Communication. I know Carol said you'd read that book way back. It's a kind of technical read, sort of, but it's a great little book, and it has just amazing examples of ways to like talk to people, talk through difficult situations in a non-aggressive. What they mean by non-violent communication is non-aggressive communication. So it's a great little tool to have. But he said that something like this, that over and over again, we must consciously replace the phrase, I'm angry because they blank, with I'm angry because I am needing blank. Like understanding what is our unmet need that is making us feel angry, right? Because we can stay angry at someone else for doing something all day long, and that's not going to shift anything for us, right? So we need to focus on what is happening with us, what need is being unmet, and then what can I do to help get that need met or to express what is actually going on with me versus just I'm angry at you for X, right? Very, very big thing. Seems small thing to say, really hard to do. So that's about catching ourselves when we get in that pattern and we're just stuck and we're just stewing because we're angry at somebody for something that they've done or said, and knowing that, yeah, it's good. We can be there. We can get angry. We can punch pillows. We can do whatever we need to do for a little while. But eventually we want to shift that to looking at what's actually going on in us. That is something we probably haven't expressed or haven't taken action on that we can help ourselves with. So then anybody have comments about that before I talk about the intro video?
I do.
Yes, Mary?
I am right where you are talking about right now. And I don't know. Do you want me to share what I'm dealing with or not?
If you feel comfortable sharing, sure.
I loaned somebody money, and it was not a good plan. And they did the poor me trick, and so I jumped in with sympathy and not empathy.
Yes, yeah, good for recognizing that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this lesson was all over me anyway. I just, asked for when I could be paid back because I know that person has just gotten money. And they said something like, I'm not going to screw you by not paying you back. I will give it to you when I get it. So, um, I think it was taken as aggression on my part, but I realized that my need is that I was not being respected, and I feel very used and let down. And this person is not one that could accept me saying that. So I am sort of at a standstill, not knowing how to move forward. But at the same time, I have decided that if I get rid of this person in my life, it's worth that much money.
So you just paid this person to get rid of them. Okay. So there's a lot going on there, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so actually, the one of the unmet needs, you so is it very clear that you don't want this person in your life before this happened? Is this someone you didn't want in your life?
Yeah.
They already were someone you didn't want in your life.
Yeah, but it has gone through different phases because this person will fill in and help me when I need something, and it's been a game of keeping me hooked.
Okay.
Um, very disappointing and sad for
Can you
me.
can you be okay without this person's help?
I will be okay. I will
You
make myself okay.
okay, so there's that piece of it, but there's still this piece that this is unresolved, right?
Yes,
The person may have manipulated you, right? That's
yes,
in the end on you, right? But at
yes,
this point, the agreement was it was a loan. That's clear, right? They knew it
yes,
was something that they're supposed to pay you back for. So
right.
it is perfectly legitimate in your to be very rational and say, I need to know when, if they're saying I'm going to pay you back when I get it. It's very reasonable for you to ask for what is the date of that? What can I expect? Do we need to put a payment plan together? I'm happy to work with you. I understand this is challenging, right? I don't know their perspective, like whether you may know more than I do. Maybe you don't, but find out like what exactly is the situation. When do you think you can pay it back? How, and it's even worth saying to them that whether they think you need the money or not, or like some people are like, she doesn't need me to need me to pay her back right now, so I'll pay her back whenever I can get around to it because she doesn't need the money. I don't know if that's what they're saying, but
Mm.
that's irrelevant. The point is that you loaned them money, and this is about trust in the relationship, and being true to our words and agreements. And they don't know whether you need the money or not. It's that's irrelevant. It's that it was a loan. Now, honestly, probably in future situations, it's good to have that conversation up front. This is the loan. These are the terms. This is when you say you're going to be able to pay it back. Right. And then if you need to come back and revisit it later, but that's the communication and trust, is that we're staying in dialogue about it and you're showing me intention that you want to pay it back. Right. It doesn't. Anyway, so those are, I don't know if that's helpful, but some of the ways that you might be able to approach it to say that if our relationship's going to go forward, I need to know that there's trust and respect and open communication here. You can even say, I've had situations in the past where I've been taken advantage of. I don't like that feeling. Maybe I got a little triggered. Let's talk. I do need to know that you understood this was a loan. I'm helping you out. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Yeah. And and if you don't really care in the end whether the relationship ends or not, then don't be afraid to set these boundaries. But again, do it in love, do it in empathy. If you know that they really are struggling financially, be willing to come up with a term that works for them, but they have to at least start paying you back, right? Maybe they can't pay the full amount back, but they could at least do some good faith effort to show you that their intention is to pay you back and that matters to them. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, not easy, not easy. But like for this lesson, what that comes down to is you stepping back until you can think about it rationally,
Yeah.
right? And have that place of like empathy and accountability
Right.
at the same time. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. And try not to accuse them of not wanting to pay you back until they prove for sure that you've set up a payment plan or something and they still are blowing you off
Yeah.
without communicating why or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
okay. Ooh, yeah, this was a good one for you this week. Right on time. Um, yeah. So the intro video was all about the difference between assertive and aggressive communication and behavior. So Mary, you don't have to give details, but looking back on how you handled that conversation, do you feel like you were assertive or do you feel like you fell into the trap of aggressive behavior?
It was probably perceived as aggressive because I do not approach this person that way. And this would be a new way of communicating. So I'm sure that was like, oh my God, what's going on with this woman? So
Okay. So that's a little bit different though. Be sure you go back and look and be clear on whether, because you might have just been assertive and it was received as aggressive. We've talked about that, right? Especially if it's
yeah,
not. So check back on yourself. And if there's anything you feel like you said that was actually aggressive rather than assertive, you could apologize for that, right? You could reword it
yeah,
in a way, or you could put it in a more of an empathy sandwich. Sometimes if we start out saying, I understand your situation, now here's where I'm feeling, how do we
right,
get to here, right? So that it's more like a partnership and we're working together to get to the end result. But you can always go back and try that again. But also in the end, you don't have to apologize for asking in any way, right? It's perfectly legitimate for you to ask about when someone's going to pay back money that was loaned, and to set that up. So yeah. Carol and Colleen, do you feel like, did you have any confusion before this about the difference between assertive and aggressive? Is it clearer to you after this lesson?
Definitely clearer.
Okay.
And it really reminded me of, I have a few students that are more timid or introverted, and just how sometimes in order to be assertive, they almost have to feel aggressive, and
Mm.
kind
Yeah.
of being able to find that, like, okay, let's practice this without the actual communication. Like, what is it in that energy that helps you get your point across? So it's not necessarily the anger, but it's that feeling of like, I have power here, or that I can make a change. What I found really important for me is that check back in about our responses, like, saying we're sorry, or the guilt, like identifying those feelings so that I could be proactive before the anger kicks in.
Mm,
Um, and then I think what you were just talking about with Mary about like being proactive in that situation so that I can set myself up for success so that I'm not reacting. Um, and I
yeah.
think even having the verbiage ahead of time is really, we had talked about that. And I think one of our one-on-one talks about um, really identifying the language that's being used, because I think that was my awareness. It actually wasn't, well, I guess maybe it was a passive aggressive from someone else.
Okay.
And I don't even think they're aware of it.
Probably.
So I think the check in on my own, like, what am I taking personal, or what need is not being met, has been really helpful for me, because I think, just like Mary stated, it's the fact that I feel unrespected or disrespected.
Yep.
Um, And this is a different one, but it's something that layers into that trigger. It's a barn owner that
Okay.
it's actually a positive thing. He's trying to compliment me, but he's like a new student, one of my new students. He's like, oh, she's drank the Kool-Aid.
Uh, that's what he said to you?
And that's what he said to me
Wow.
in front of her, in front of people. And so, like, I understand what he's trying to say, but it bothers me the reference of that. And I think that's where people go ahead,
What do you think he's trying to say?
like that she gets my program, that she's bought in.
Okay.
That's what I think he's trying to say. But the actual language of it and the energy of it makes me feel extremely undermined.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it someone you feel like you could actually have that conversation with?
I have, because one of his other things is he'll say that I throw chicken bones and read tea leaves.
And he probably thinks he's being funny. He's probably using humor to what he thinks is humor to
Yes,
deflect something. I wonder what you have any sense of what that underlying thing is in him that he's avoiding feeling?
I don't know.
Don't
Just that
know.
I'm out of the ordinary. I don't know.
I think he's jealous.
So what I realized though in hindsight is like I really, and I've said this for years, I think he's oblivious to it.
Yeah.
And then I think the other part of it is the question you're asking, like, what is that actually about? Like, what in him is actually causing that? And I think it's where not so much now, like I've built a good community of people in the borders and my students, and they do believe the way I do. But when I first moved in, I think there was a lot of people that thought I was woo woo or, not valid as a trainer. And so I think it's still him like protecting or afraid that what I'm talking about is not real.
So is he a
Um,
program? What's his relationship to you?
he is the barn owner.
Oh, he's the barn owner.
And
Oh, I think that's
mm,
probably a little bit of a way to put you in your place. He feels a little threatened, right? Is what my guess would be. Like Mary said, could be jealousy, could be feeling a little threatened by your difference. But yeah, that would be a situation. It might even be interesting to, since you don't know exactly what's causing him to say it, is to actually say, what do you mean by that when you say it? Because
uh-huh.
it actually makes me feel X. I don't know if that's how you mean it. So I want to understand, and I want you to understand that it does make me feel like this. And I care about our relationship, so I don't want these vibes to be here, right? So that's the empathy
Mhm.
part of it, is to let them know up front, I care about the relationship. I really want to understand what's going on here because this is how it makes me feel. I don't know if that's how you mean it. So I'm just curious, why do you say it and what does it mean? And if he just shrugs it off to say, oh, it's just like blah, 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 then don't worry about, don't be afraid to stand. And that's where you're like kind of broken record-ish, where you say, well, if it's just a joke, I appreciate it. It does make me feel uncomfortable. Right. And
Mhm.
I would hope you care what you're saying makes me feel. Um, and that's getting into it. Like that can make him uncomfortable, but it'll
Yeah.
tell you something, right? If they do
Mm-hmm.
care, or even let him go away, feel hurt, feel
Mm-hmm.
whatever, right? But he might come back to you at a later time and say, thank you for letting me know that's how it made you feel. Might or might not, but
Yeah. And I think that's where I was able to, and this is a few months ago, um, be able to set a boundary of like when he walks in, he'll just like start blurting out or talking to people or hey, Colleen, come over here, if even if I'm in the middle of teaching. And I was able to say, like, when you're on the phone in the office, do I just come in and start talking to you? And that like was a light bulb for him.
good.
So I feel like I was able to set that boundary. But I think, yeah, asking questions and then the empathy sandwich is definitely things that I want to put in my repertoire. And then I
Yeah.
think the other piece, going back to what you were saying before, like the list of like um saying sorry. I can't remember the other ones right now off the top of my head.
When we're being passive with the things we say.
When yeah, when we're being passive, like that I can't like instead of being the broken record, that I don't feel like, oh, that's what it is, that I don't feel I have to explain or validate
Yeah.
why I'm saying or asking for that boundary.
Right. Right. And there's another layer to it. If he's saying some of these things in front of other people, I'm sure, you're also like, what do they think he means by that? Right. But you don't need to draw that into it necessarily. If you address it at the core to let him know that it affects you, hopefully he'll care enough about that. And then the other part will take care of itself. But if we go into them like, oh, and I'm sure so-and-so's, thinking this when you say that, then that just brings in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
extra stuff that isn't really necessary and might make him feel more attacked or more judged. I would just, based on human behavior, I would say this is all coming from some deep place of insecurity in him, whether he knows it or not. And even the like not being aware of things we do, like going on autopilot, can be almost like a trauma response of like, oh, I know this humor, or if I come in loud, then it's just his coping strategies, especially if he
Yes.
does those in other situations and not just with you.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's an underlying, probably, whether he's aware of it or not, or has identified it, of insecurity. So the main thing there is, I think, if he knows that the relationship does matter to you, that's going to be the thing that matters most. So making sure that you start and end with that, and then, but we have to address this part because it's affecting. I want to be on good relationship with you. Like, this relationship is really important to us, to me and to us, and that
Mm-hmm.
we're on good terms, and that there's not this underlying, energy going on that he may not even know. He may not even know that it's,
Right.
yeah. Yeah. Good.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. Carol, anything you want to add to this?
Um, I trying to think. I mean, I'm still fairly isolated, and a lot of the places where I was volunteering that would get me angry, I'm not there anymore.
Well, that's
So yeah, well, that only because I moved away. It's too, if I didn't move, I probably still would be going, only because I enjoyed the work, which is a volunteer at a therapeutic riding school. But over the course of the years, I was getting more and more excluded.
mm,
Um, and the staff running the organization uh, got more and more cliquey, and a few of them were just, I don't, passive aggressive or whatever, but they just were totally, they just didn't want to even acknowledge my existence. I mean, some of them did grudgingly, some of them, the one, when I was there, the one instructor was so nice. I said, okay, as long as I'm with you, I'm
mm,
fine, and I can ignore the rest of them. But things just kept happening, and I never quite, I was thinking too, is they a threat? Am I a threat to them at my old age and infirmities? Yeah, I don't know, because I have a wealth of experience with horses.
mm,
And I also, unlike them, even though they just graduated from uh no, Delaware Del Val, which is a big equestrian school with or at least they have a program in it, and some of them actually work there now. uh they don't seem to know what we know.
mm,
And so everything I would be trying, okay, well, let's see, this horse reacts this way. Maybe if I give him some calming signals, and or if I try this or try that, and then I'd get yelled at. What are you doing? Yeah, he doesn't like that. Well, it worked, but of course they were totally unsupportive of what I was doing. And the few people I think that were supportive eventually must have gotten talked to, because then they stopped letting me do the, play with this, that, and the other thing. And they were definitely of the, they were not quite, you're the dominant one, you got to show the horses boss, but it was a very short step away from it. And one of the trainers, I would observe him when nobody else was around, and he was downright abusive, in my opinion, with the horse, especially, it's like, that's not necessary to get that angry with the horse, that you're jerking on their mouth and their heads up in the air. And
so you know what,
anyway,
Carol,
yeah.
it sounds to me like that was the culture of that place, and they were not only treating horses that way, but they were treating you that way too.
Well, it became the culture. It wasn't the culture initially. And then they just the people who were graduating from Del Val decided that everybody else there wasn't doing their job, and then one day they're gone. I mean, the executive director was even fired, and she was one of the people who when I started there, she was one of my supporters, and she was my riding instructor. And yeah, and I would talk to some people about it, but eventually they'd all be protective, so oh, this really bothers me when of course I never had the whatever courage to confront Ryan, because his name's Ryan, because I just didn't think in a way it was worth it. I'm more of a passive aggressive. and I'm guilty of saying things to kind of, how would I put, say things that I think are funny, but it is a deflection of, this really bothers me, but I don't want to say anything, so I'm gonna, or sarcasm. I used to like, and I would always blame that on, when I'm from New York, so yeah. I'm
Well,
sarcastic.
I love that you're recognizing your patterns, right? So clearly they had their patterns, and then you had your patterns that
Right.
were probably both all feeding into like unresolution of it.
Yeah.
But I will say that when you're up against a whole like culture, a group or an organization, that's a lot harder to deal with than when you can just deal one-on-one with a relationship. Like Mary and Colleen are both talking about a one-on-one. It's much easier to deal with one-on-one, and it's much easier if the relationship is one that matters to both of you in some way, because you're more invested then in figuring out a way to say it with empathy. We have to decide which relationships are worth putting and how much energy into, as Mary was saying. Like, I feel like Mary maybe wants to try a little bit. I mean, I'm sure you'd like to get your money back, so you want to try a little bit harder. But ultimately, right, you said if it comes down to it, you'd rather lose the money and be done with her. If that's what you don't want to do, is lose the money and then keep her in your life, right? Be done wrong by her and keep that relationship going in your life. That would be really not healthy. And so I think for you, Carol, since those relationships are in the past, it's just useful to think back as you're doing and say, okay, I noticed, here's myself, I'm seeing some of these things I'm learning about. I was kind of doing those, and I know I was doing them because I didn't have the courage to, or I didn't, maybe not just the courage, but I might not have had the tools or resources to know even how to address it in a healthier way. And the trick, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, and intuitively, I think I knew all of this, which is why I said nothing. I mean, there was a time in my life when if I was sharing with somebody a certain thing, they'd be like, "What'd you do that for?" And then I'd change how I was doing things based on what their feedback was, only to find out that I got myself in more trouble. And then years later, in some class like this, I find out that no, you hadn't read that right. And you know, I've been, let's see, the assertiveness training. I did assertiveness training in 1980.
Mhm.
And that's when I first realized that I'm too afraid of people to do this. I don't want to, I can't deal with, and then it became, it's my responsibility, I'm okay, you're okay kind of thing. And so it was, the way my trauma pattern is that, okay, it's all my responsibility. If they do this to me, they're okay. So yeah, and it all, things are getting better now as far as, oh, well, we thought that then, but
Yeah. But also
as,
for someone who has a lot of trauma issues and about being confident enough, like really the place for you to work on it is in relatively safe relationships.
yeah,
There's a
which again, I'm kind of like, and where are those?
Where
What
are
are those?
those? Maybe with your horse even, right? Like, whatever the opportunity is to work on just
Mhm.
little practices of being like, maybe I could just let her know that didn't feel great, right?
Yeah.
How do I let my horse know, with love, but also assertiveness that I didn't appreciate her dragging me over there or stepping into my space or, right? So
Yeah.
rather than
Well,
taking on
that's something I would be more assertive / aggressive at one point with a horse. Because now I'm, again, now I'm getting into the um I don't know, more mindful, or at least, thinking about the horse as a choice or a voice. And before we were just, I was just objectifying them like a lot of horse people, and
yeah,
not looking at them as an individual. It was like, oh, I'm gonna jump this horse and we're gonna have fun, and never considered, does she really like doing it?
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, if a horse would pull me away, I'd, yeah. And of course now, then again, at this previous place, sometimes I would be told to do it, and sometimes if I did it on my own, I was yelled at for doing it, and I'd be like, I don't know what you people want.
Well,
Um,
that even gets into, and I think it goes back to some of what Colleen was saying with some of her students, finding have to be that aggressive energy to even have a boundary.
yeah,
But
yeah,
there's a really interesting phenomenon I see happening with horse people. There's a lot of really kind-hearted, gentle, people-pleasing people who are drawn to horses because like horses are easier than people, right?
yeah. Well, that is true.
It is true. But also what happens is, and this was true for me in my earlier life, I was so passive and had so little control in most of my life that it actually felt really amazing to me to go out and be able to get a horse to do things, right? Horses were easier. They
Yeah,
couldn't talk back in the same way. They couldn't hurl insults at me. Most
right,
horses,
right, right.
until I met Tempo, most horses don't attack you for being rude, right? She was a big wake up call for me because she was the one who let me know, look, what other people are doing to you, you're trying to do to me. And I
Yeah,
needed that
yeah,
wake
yeah.
up call, right?
And
At that time. But so there's lots of dynamics here that it's easy to go from passive unhealthy to aggressive unhealthy because that feels better than just getting trampled on, or passive aggressive can feel better than just being trampled on. But we still have to go, but those also are still not healthy
yeah,
yet.
yeah.
Assertive.
Yeah, I developed that way of coping, the passive aggressive stuff, which I would not have called it that at one point in time.
Right.
Was I wanted to do something, but I knew my mother was going to be hanging over my shoulder telling me what not to do, or don't do that because you never clean up, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I just went, all right, she's out of the house now, I'm gonna do it. Get it done before she gets back, and then boop, it's done. Yeah, and I tend to do that a lot still, because I don't want to hear the negative comments. And
So there's a lot of layers there to unwind, but you're unwinding them. And I think rather than just saying, I don't have any opportunities to practice this anymore, look for the little opportunities. Again, even if it's with your
Oh,
horse,
yeah.
safe, in safe situations, to just even go through the process of trying to figure out what would the passive response be? What would the passive aggressive response be? What would the aggressive response be? What would the healthy assertive response? I mean, just that's a great exercise to be able to identify in any situation with a person or an animal, what would those look like? Right? Is
Yeah.
a great exercise. So cool. Then let's see, the PDF for this week about steps for learning to express boundaries with love. I just want to go over the 5 points again, because those are really good ones. First is acknowledge that it's going to take a bit of time to stop feeling guilt and regret when setting boundaries, right? Or to change our patterns. Just knowing that that's not going to happen overnight. Just because we know better doesn't mean we're always going to do better. There has to be a really intentional link between those two. The other is, and this I think goes into a sort of self-check about aggression versus assertive, is to check in with ourselves to make sure the boundaries that we are feeling motivated to set are truly healthy ones. A lot of times when we want to put up that huge wall or feel aggressive, we're not necessarily putting up the healthiest boundary. So asking ourselves that before we take action on it, is this really a healthy boundary? Is this really the boundary I want? Is this really the boundary I need? Is there another, interim place in the boundary? Maybe it's not the extreme boundary. Maybe I just need this moderate boundary, but my instincts are over here because I'm hurt and upset. I want to put up the whole wall. That kind of thing. Or if the boundary is actually avoidance and not actually a boundary. It might be that we're just avoiding. That's not necessarily healthy. The third is recognizing, and I think this is really important, certainly for Mary and Carol, based on things you've said, that setting boundaries on the fly is going to be tougher, and we're going to be not as what do I want to say, graceful, not as fluent with it as we can be if we can take the time to sit back and think about it and actually go through this process of what's passive aggressive, what's aggressive, what's assertive. On the fly, we may not be able to do that. And so whenever we can, to ask for a little time to get back to somebody so that we can do that, or deal with it as best you can in the moment, and then know that I can come back and revisit it with this person later, and that just shows a level of maturity on my part. It's not weakness or failure to come back and say, I got a little emotional. I wasn't thinking clearly in the moment. I'd like to revisit, what I said or how I said it. That's fine to do too. We messed it up and there's no way to fix it. There's always a chance to go back with anybody who cares at all about you, is going to let you come back and clarify. And we should let other people do that to us too, if they want to. Mm-hmm. And then focus on empathy, not sympathy. So important. And then hold our ground in love and kindness. So even if someone else is uncomfortable, if they are acting out, if they lash back out, just hold our ground in love and empathy. Stay even keeled. Hard. Easy to say, hard to do. But we can do it. And when you do it, you're going to be like, oh my God, like, I can't believe that actually worked. I did it. And they responded, like, right. You'll be amazed when you find that you do it. You'll be like, this stuff really works. Okay. So the self-assessment, I glance at those. I don't really pay a lot of attention to those usually, but I did notice in this time, everybody, all 5 of you, indicated a tendency to withdraw or isolate when you feel hurt or angry. And then a couple of you also said, check the box for sometimes you walk away and focus on recentering yourselves before re-engaging. And that's awesome. And that's really the goal you want to move to, from the place of just completely withdrawing or isolating. It's okay if we need to do that initially, or that's our initial response, but we don't want to get stuck in that place of I've just isolated or withdrawn and I've put up this huge wall. The goal is that we want to take the space we need, use that space productively, and then with the goal of re-engaging from a more grounded place. So next time you notice yourself doing that, withdrawing or isolating in a relationship, first of all, don't beat yourself up. It's okay. That's your safety. That's your own self saying, I don't feel safe and I need to get out of this. So thank that part of you that recognized you needed some space. But then try not to let yourself just stay in that place for forever or even for too long. In fact, when you kind of notice that you just feel like I still can't re-engage yet, then try to do something, an activity or a practice that maybe helps you recenter. Some people, it might be meditating, it might be going for a walk, it might be going sitting outside, whatever it is for you that kind of helps you recenter. Do that when you are feeling stuck in a withdrawal or isolate tendency, and recenter yourself so that the goal can be that I want to re-engage in the relationship from a more grounded and centered place. Like say, I don't want to stay stuck in this anger or this isolation or this withdrawal. So let me do something that physically I know recenters me or grounds me, with the goal of getting myself prepared to re-engage. And then using also the scripts and the tools we have from this class to help you figure out how to say what you want to say when you re-engage. So creating space is not bad and can be very helpful, but it shouldn't be the complete end result. It's an intermediate step. And the only time you want to stay there is if you are truly at peace with ending a relationship. If you know in your heart of hearts, this relationship needs to end, I need it out of my life, I don't want it in my life, there's no circumstances under which I want it in my life, then we can isolate and withdraw. When I was in marriage therapy, I remember at the very end when my ex, I had made the decision that I was out of the marriage, finally out, and he was just begging me for us to go back to marriage counseling one more time. And of course wanted me to call to make the appointment. So I called our marriage therapist and I told her what was going on and that he wanted us to come back again. And she just said, Kim, I have one question for you. I said, what is it? And she said, is there anything in the world that he could say to you right now that would make you change your mind? And I said, no. And she said, marriage therapy is over. He can call me if he wants to come in and see me, but marriage therapy is over. Because once we've decided that there isn't anything, I'm done with this relationship, then we're done. But that's the only time at which this sort of staying in withdrawal or isolate is healthy, right? If we have any hope or we want the relationship to heal, or there's anything that they could say, if they could apologize and we'd feel better, then we're not necessarily at that place yet to say we're done. Right? Okay, so deep stuff. The journaling exercise, does anyone have anything you want to share? So the journaling exercise, it was a little complicated one, but it, probably not easy because we're getting into like that deeper stuff. But it was about if there was an aggressive interaction, either you were more aggressive than you wanted to be, or someone else was, or something was perceived as aggressive. It was about trying to really get down to what was the underlying unmet need that was there, right? Mm-hmm. Colleen, I saw you come back on. You got anything for this one?
Yeah, I think repeatedly it's respect and being seen and heard, because I realized I actually went back to like some things that happened a month or two ago with my daughter, and I realized that I was becoming aggressive with her because I had already felt disrespected earlier in the day at work. And then I was becoming aggressive with her to hold my boundary because she was challenging, and she was challenging in a disrespectful way. So it was interesting to me, you know, because at first I go into that place of like, and this is why I think she challenges the boundary so much, is that I get too firm and then I feel sorry. And then
Mm,
she uses that against me. Like she sees me
waffling.
on that fence waffling. And I was able to articulate, and it was so interesting how my son responded to it too. But I was able to articulate, mommy needs to walk away right now. Like I
Ah,
need to go get grounded and then come back. And it was so interesting because she was ready to fight, but then she softened in an appropriate way. And it, you know, kills me because with the horses in training, like it's like I don't even have to think about it. It's just muscle memory. But with her, she really triggers me to become aggressive. And I know it's an old familial pattern, like, you know, from my family, but I was so proud that I could walk away for that moment. It's
oh,
more
yeah.
that like I I just wanna I don't wanna be triggered that much. And I think that goes back to the other thing though, like the layering of recognizing, you know, leaving the baggage at the door, not bringing the workday home. And I think that even goes into we've talked about in prior sessions, like recognizing, and this is maybe part of the conversation that's a little off topic, but um, I would like the business relationship or my certain roles at the barn to change and how to like set that boundary, but not necessarily say I don't want them in my life anymore. I
Mm,
don't know if that's possible, but that's where I feel like by all means I can set that boundary and then see what the reaction is.
yep.
Um,
You
but
can
I think a
explore,
big part of it,
you can
say
explore the,
again,
you can explore the possibility of whether it's possible.
right? And then I think if anything, in just verbalizing that to you guys was that realization of that's why I need to make the change, right? If
Mm,
I'm bringing it home to my daughter, if I'm bringing it home to my husband, um, I either have to be able to hold that boundary and be disrespected and be able to hold myself
yep.
confidently, or I need to dissolve that relationship so that I don't let it affect the other parts of my life.
Bravo. So yeah, there's two choices there. It's not like there's only one choice, right? Now, one may or may not be doable, right? You may not be in a place where you can, or you may not want to be in an environment where you constantly have to just be that, like, hold that boundary, hold that boundary, hold that, like, right? That may not be the environment
Hmm.
you be in. So there's a couple questions there. Can you do it? Do you want to do it?
Hmm.
Right?
Right.
And if the answers to either or both of those are no, then yeah, it's like, this is not a healthy situation for me. But you might owe it. Oh, go ahead.
It's sorry, it just dawned on me. So I'm listening to a podcast with James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits,
Mm,
and the realization that your words just brought up to me. Um, so one of his tips in setting new habits is setting your environment up to have less friction. And I think that's where it is. Like I'm in this point where I feel like I'm doing the work, but my environment has so much friction. It's not making it easy for me to establish the new habit pattern.
correct. Yes. And that even goes back to the situation Carol talked about in that environment. I mean, sometimes when we decide, like, we now understand what kinds of relationships we want to have in our life, the amount of work it would take, and whether it's even possible to make what exists in our life fit that, may not be worth it at all, or to even to be able to start practicing and getting better at it, right? We need to get ourselves into a different environment. So yeah, there's no right or wrong choices with any of this. It's just recognizing what's happening and, like, acknowledging reality.
Yeah.
Right?
Instead of thinking I can fix it, I can fix it, I can fix it.
They're going to change magically, right? It's like acknowledging that, holy cow, what it would take to change this into what I know I want and need. You know, sometimes we want to walk away from that by just realizing, like, no, that's a battle I don't want to take on in my life right now. Yeah, good stuff. One other thing that you said there that really first of all, kudos, kudos, kudos. One, for walking away, and two, for saying out loud to them, mommy needs to walk away for a minute. There's a difference between just turning your back on someone and walking away, and actually just saying to them, I'm too triggered right now. I need to just take a break. I want to come back to this conversation, but I need to step out. And that in itself will change the whole dynamic, because we're in this, like, right? This is the dynamic that's happening. And it's like, what do they say in training? Like, don't give the horse anything to push against. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we just say, I love you and I love me, and I'm gonna remove myself, then this person now has nothing to push against anymore either. So there
Yes.
shifts them. They're gonna be like, oh, well, wait, what, right?
What?
It's gonna cause them to take a break whether they wanted to or not.
Mm-hmm. Or even that abandonment, because I think that's the pattern that I feel from my childhood is like, if I was being bad, I was sent away.
Yeah.
Ah,
Like, or, like, and I think that's a big part of it too, that I verbalize it so that it's not like I'm turning my back or abandoning if they are not in the behavior that I feel is right for the moment. And I think that's the other thing I struggle with, especially with my daughter, not so much with my son, because he's more introverted and he knows like his timing is better. But my daughter, she, she'll flip a switch and go real strong. But I love that you said that, because it's that opposition reflex, right? If I am softer and there's nothing to push back against, that could help her shift better.
absolutely could. Yeah. Yes. Yep. And it's really, really important, because a lot of people have abandonment issues. So it is really important that when we walk away, we don't just make people feel like we're abandoning them. We just let them know, I just need to, like, recenter, rebrief, reboot, take a break. I want to come back. I'm not abandoning you, but I gotta go right now. Or have, like, your whole energy can just say it, that of like, mommy needs to take a break. That implies you're coming back,
Right.
right? Not just like, I'm done with this conversation.
Mhm.
Done with
Yeah.
you.
And I think, like, I was even thinking of another time that I was more grounded, that I was able to say, like, in a healthy way, like, I won't let you speak to me that way. I'll wait for you, like, when we're both more calm, then we
Yep.
can talk about it. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. Great. I'm proud of you, because it's knowing it and then actually doing it and saying it, like, in the moment, being able to do it is like awesome. So congratulations.
Gives me so much more grace for my students with their horses, because I'm like, why are you being so hard, or why are you being aggressive? And then I'm like, because we get pushed.
Yeah. Well, and we have to, as a teacher and student, like you said, you're bringing the work stuff home to your family. Your students are bringing their life into their relationship with with the horses, and are trying to, like, if they've had, anyway, all that's coming
Yeah.
with that. And it's getting triggered by what the horse is doing or not doing also. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings us kind of to the horse behavior video, which was a more active one for this time. My main question was, like, how did witnessing, because everybody has their different interpretations or feelings that come up when they watch it. How did it make you feel to watch? So we'll go around. We'll start with Mary. Mary, how did it make you feel to watch the interaction between Shiloh and Tempo?
It made me anxious. Just because I hate conflict so much, it's like, let me back out of this. It's like, I don't want to watch it. But it did trigger my thing. And please don't fight. Please don't fight. It's just hay. Oh, God. Help me, Jesus.
So I would say for you to go back and continue watching the video a few more times. Try to watch it one time and say, I'm going to watch it with empathy for Shiloh. I'm going to watch it with empathy for Tempo. And then I'm going to watch it with empathy for both, right? Get out of yourself and just see,
Right.
like, or what would it feel like to express myself the way Shiloh is? What would it feel like to be Tempo in this moment? Can I even imagine embodying that energy? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. And of course, horse language and behavior is different than human. So it's like getting down to the underlying energy of that. Neither of them apologized for who they were. They both expressed what they wanted, and they both seemed to be able to take it. Like neither of them really were acting like their feelings were hurt by what the
Right.
other either. It was they were just in a negotiation about it.
I liked it really, but it's like, oh, please don't hurt.
Conflict. And then me as also a caretaker, like I kind of set that up because it was herd integration and I needed to see how they're going to work through things. But ultimately, I don't usually I try to have more than one hay pile so they don't have to have that level of conversations. But Tempo was a little in season, and I think she would have tried to stay with him regardless. So he was needing to say, I don't care, even if your hormones, like right now, no.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, Carol, how did watching it make you feel?
Yeah, at first I felt aggression, that there was aggression between the two, or at least Shiloh was being aggressive to Tempo, and Tempo, maybe I'm thinking of this in terms of male female, but anyway, Tempo would be okay, you know, don't get mad at me. I want, but she was persistent. But I always felt like he was definitely on getting his way more than she was. Uh, and then of course I read the questions that to look at, and I'm like, all right, look at this again and see if I can see no aggression. And I kept looking and looking and looking. I think what I finally came up with was the okay, well, they're not connecting their one of them's nickering, so that's sort of, to me anyway, a sign of please, whatever.
So the
But I didn't know that. Yeah.
nickering was actually coming from Puck, who was in a neighboring paddock.
Oh,
So it
so
really
he's
just
trying to
squealing
calm the
between those two.
situation down.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Because that was what I heard, the squealing, and I again wasn't sure which one was which, because they both would be kicking at the same time. So it's
Yeah.
but that's good to know. Yeah. So that wasn't even them doing that, and that, I guess if I had knew that, I'd be even harder for me to find
The assertion. So
the working through a relay, or coming to the word I'm trying to think of.
an agreement,
Yeah,
yeah.
it just seemed like and I put in that whole thing about my horse being integrated with two ponies, and that one of the two ponies is definitely the queen, and will keep everyone away from, she decides, I don't want to eat from this side anymore, I want to eat from that side. She'll chase whoever's on the other side away, but then that one will come around and go back to the other side. Whereas my horse, neither one of them will let her near it.
Yeah.
And I said, that's so rude, because this was her paddock that you came into, not the other way around. But
There's a lot of dynamics there that we could like
yeah,
flesh
and I do have video of that, because
out.
when they were integrated, I wanted to take a video, and I have to make that all one video, but yeah.
But
Yeah.
back to the thing about aggression versus assertiveness. So if Shiloh, in one of the clues for Shiloh in that video is that he always uses his back, he kicks out with his back feet. Aggression for him would be coming at you with my ears pinned and my teeth bared, like, right, I'd be coming at you with more, or landing those kicks, because believe me, if he wanted to land them, he could have landed them. So that's how I know. Just the part of it is knowing these two and their relationship, but that was a lot of expression, and it was serious. I mean, it was like, it was kind of saying, let's not let it go any farther, because I am serious, I am holding my boundary. And they weren't so much that quiet, like we said, quiet, calm repeating record. But he was willing to repeat that as many times as he needed to, or to go up if he needed to, if he wasn't feeling heard. But they were able to work it out without it having to go to actual injury or harm. But yeah, they were part of it is to say that like assertive can, like, we can't be afraid to have disagreements. We can't be afraid of emotions to be involved in something. We just have to learn how to keep those emotions under control, or know when we're losing control, right? Know when we're losing control and flipping over into aggression. Colleen, how did you feel when you were watching it?
Found it comical. So I have we have a big herd in the back that's all geldings. That's I think we have 10 out there. So I think, you know, I layer on, like I watch them do it, and then, you know, a few minutes later they're all eating together just fine.
Yeah.
So even though it was a lot of energy, I did kind of find it comical. I'm intrigued by that. But
more horse behavior, probably more horse discussion, and seen it go up and down. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing is that I think the gelding reminds me of one of the ones I know who he can be, I don't say dramatic, I would just say very clear. And it can be taken as, like, if somebody else was watching it, that he's being very dominant, but I know he's just holding that boundary. And in fact, if anything, I've seen him use that behavior to deflect other horses getting into something that's inappropriate. So I think that's probably another piece of it too that I've seen. And just like you were saying, like, that they will connect, that they will keep coming versus like saying no and then going back. Like they'll just turn and face. The thing I also find interesting about it though is and I apologize, I'm gonna get the mare
Tempo.
when she was coming back in, Tempo, like just watching her body language of like how she was lowering as she was like, but I could now, how about now on this side? And so like I think that was probably another part that was kind of comical to me, like not I didn't feel like she was doing it passively, you know, like she was doing it like very intentionally, like, well, how about over here?
Funny that you caught in on
So,
that, because my other gelding that I used to have, Shoki, who raised her, she could totally manipulate him and she would play it. She would just like, oh, how about if I ask this way? What if I ask like this? What if I ask like this? What if I like you? And he would eventually let her in. So I think she was just asking the question, like, are we playing that kind of game? And Charlotte was like, nope, we're not playing that game. Yeah. But you're right. She was asking some questions to see if he could be worked in that situation, right? You know, where were his boundaries on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think she really reminded me. There's I call him like the second, you know, like the second in command or the lieutenant that does that same kind of thing. Like it depends on who's head of the herd that day, but he always plays second in command, and it's kind of that same idea of like, well, how about, all right, am I sorry, where I was going with it was I was thinking about it in terms of body language. Like he will sometimes like defend the head of the herd to be like, yep, this is my buddy. But then come into the, you know, to that guy like, hey, can I hang over here? So like thinking about that behavior and how, you know, they're constantly reading the room. Like that's the one thing that I think in hindsight is that idea of reading the room. And reading the room, you know, there's another gelding that I can think of that he always reads it from afar. This is the one I actually relate to the most. So like when we started showing at a higher level, one of my students was like, you get so quiet. And she was like, I don't think I've ever seen you so quiet. And it's because like I pause and I just take everything in and evaluate to see how other people are behaving, to see how I should behave. which I know is a little bit of a chameleon type thing. But at the same time, now that I'm more aware of that, that I can be like, no, I'm assessing the situation so that I can choose if this is an environment that I want to keep engaging with, or if I'm going to find, you know, another way to be or place to be.
Yep. Yeah, no, I do think assessing environments is key. Like, right, we want to know what we're dealing with and how, like, what boundaries would I need to have with this? How do I, right? How can I be me in this situation? What is happening here? We definitely have to be able to do that. Yeah. And back to Shiloh and tempo a little bit. What's interesting, so both of these are horses. They're both very comfortable being assertive. Out of my herd, they are the two that are the most comfortable being assertive, and they expect others to be self-confident and assertive as well. They both can lose patience with anybody who Tempo can lose patience a lot. Shiloh actually tries to mentor others to be more assertive and confident, which is quite fascinating. He's always trying to get the others to use their voices. And sometimes he's a little provocative to do that, but he always is very careful. He just knows how far he can push someone that would cross over to feeling aggressive, and he'll just take you right to that limit, and then he'll be like, nope, I'm backing off, right? Like be there, be confident. So and he was a wild Mustang, so he has very good social skills. I'm sure he learned a lot of that. He was wild till he was 5. So but both of those horses also do not have any tolerance for being manipulated by a human or us coming in with our agenda. They have different strategies. Tempo can be aggressive. Shiloh is out of there, right? Just completely like we're not even talking anymore. But they both really don't have any tolerance for non-healthy assertive behavior from a human. Passive aggressive or aggressive don't really fly for either of them, which is quite interesting. And I think the more you learn to be healthy assertive, the less tolerance you have for all the other trauma, right? And in a way, but also when you model healthy assertiveness, other people will step up their game as well. Like it's a great thing to be able to model, because there's not a lot of it being modeled out there.
No.
All right, so we've got like 15 minutes left. I want to talk a little bit about next steps, but is there anything else that, I guess one thing I want to ask, if you don't have something if you have something burning you want to share, definitely share. But otherwise, I'm curious, like, what do each of you feel has either shifted most in you over the last 5 weeks, or maybe the one most important thing that you think is going to help you move forward differently, something like that? Anybody want to? I'll let you raise your hand if you want to start instead of calling on you. Mary, okay.
I think understanding the empathy sympathy thing was huge for me. I've always been the person that wanted to help somebody if I thought I could. Look where it's gotten me. 0. So that has been, I mean, I wrote that down and just have thought about it a lot, and also backing away and taking time to ground myself and realizing that my whole ball of wax is based on fear, and that is why I do what I do, which I did not realize that.
Those are big. Those are good ones.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, sympathy, empathy is huge. It's not yours to take. It's not your responsibility to fix other people's situation. Yeah. Good. Carol or Colleen?
I think I would echo that idea, like saying it, understanding it, but actually living it, right? Living that idea that I don't need to own other people's reactions to me or the boundaries that I set. And then I think the other layer for me is not taking those things personally, like not taking those reactions personally, that I can feel good in holding my own space. And then I think the other layer of it, which I think I've been aware of, but I just on a deeper level, is the how my passive aggressive kicks in. Like, I really didn't think, I thought I was over that. And I think the realization of when and where I become passive aggressive, I was able to recognize a couple months ago, you know, like I don't feel congruent because I know I want to talk about this person behind their back and that's not me.
Yeah.
But realizing like the resentment and those pieces, like I have been feeling them longer than I gave credit for. So anyway, being aware of that, and this is probably further back, that recognizing the old pattern that I have broken is my aggressive, like when someone challenges me that I become bigger and have to like go too far to try and set myself back up in leadership.
That's huge.
And
Kudos.
yeah, so I think that recognizing that I think I've broken that pattern. So I think that's fun.
That's great. Yeah. 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 I remember first realizing that I had a lot of passive aggressive tendencies, and then realizing that aggression, like even that sort of like walking away, isolating, not talking to you anymore, whatever, like that's aggressive. I was like, oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know it's aggression. That's a form of aggression, right? You're shutting someone down. So yeah, it's fascinating when we can be like, look at ourselves and go, oh, get me doing that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Carol, what about you? Biggest take?
I got a lot of insights, and I guess I need to go back and take take notes. I'm not very good at that because then I just end up having scrap paper all over the place and I never look at it again. Um, but there were a lot of times when I realized that, so I tend to take other people's thoughts as, yeah, I'm trying to think. Somebody gives me their opinion and it throws me off. It's all of a sudden I'm considering their opinion and am I wrong? You know, and maybe I am wrong. And so that it sort of helped me see where a lot of that is going on, which of course causes me to change what I'm doing or what I think was right to, oh no, that's not right because so and so said this and they're really good at whatever. Um, the old expert thing, I guess.
Yeah.
uh, and how I was been gaslit. I mean, I know I've been gaslit all my life, but even more, it's still. And what Colleen was saying about the horse interaction was kind of like, huh, yeah, I can see that, she's kind of like coming in and how about here? Whereas I'm just seeing it as him, no matter what you do, you're gonna get chased away, which I guess is another trigger maybe.
So for you, like with Mary, it's can be useful to rewatch the videos
Yeah,
now that you've other perspectives and see if you can
yeah,
see that other, because we get used to seeing and interpreting things from our own lens.
right.
So just that practice, and it's wonderful. It's fun to do it with horses, right? Doesn't
Yeah,
feel quite as, it can be harder to do to look at our own interactions. Although I think all of you are doing great with that too, of analyzing what's actually happening in your own dynamics.
yeah.
But cool. All right. Well, so end of the 6 weeks. And again, kudos to all of you. So proud of you for committing to this and doing it. And it's been really fun being a small group. Actually, I feel like we've gotten to dig in quite a bit, which is even more than I thought we'd be able to. But so next steps, a couple of you have already, but be sure to complete the course feedback form if you haven't, that's in the course, because your experiences as end users mean a lot to me, mean everything to me. That's why I do this. So I want to know what worked well, what didn't. you can practice your like being honest and assertive. Like it doesn't, you don't have to just please me. Definitely anything that you have that are suggestions about how to make it better for future students, I definitely want to hear those. And let me see. Oh, the form in the class is specific to the online course, and it really doesn't have any questions related to this live component. So if there's anything specific you want to share about the live Zoom component or the Facebook group, any of the add-ons that we did here, use that. There's a section in the form that says, is there anything else you'd like to share with Kim? And you can put it into that section. The Facebook group we've been using for this, so I'm going to run this class, the live thing again in August with another cohort. So I'm kind of trying to make up my mind and would love your input on this about whether I just reset that Facebook group each time, like clear it out, you guys go out and the new group comes in, or if I keep that Facebook group open and so that it becomes kind of like a growing herd community of students who are either actively in or graduates of this live component. I guess and you can get back to me if you don't have to answer right away, but if you know, like whether you would like to stay involved with something like that, or like, I don't need another Facebook group. So you can, let me know your thoughts on that. I'm open to either one. So that's what I'm trying to decide with that. And that one, the new class won't start until August. So for sure, I'll leave it open and you guys can still use it until then. And then I'll kind of make a decision, or if you have thoughts about it, a preference either way, let me know. Then, oh yeah, I wanted to share this. Let me see if I can share screen. I don't do this very often. Yeah, here we go. So let me see if this comes up for you guys. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I just created this. I'm taking another course myself that's like a business coach, a business class, which is helping me get organized a bit more and really helping me figure out how I can best serve my students with the boundary work going forward. And so it came up with the 6 steps to boundary mastery. And this class was really focused mostly on 1 and 2, which is understanding the essence of boundaries and their role in empowering healthy living, and reflecting on boundaries. So exploring your unique relationship with boundaries and all these other aspects of it, which is what we've been doing in the class. We've done just a little bit of dancing with boundaries. So learning to navigate that delicate dance of setting and respecting boundaries in all areas of life. We've taken a little bit of work with that, but 3 and 4, and that goes together. So the learning to dance with boundaries and getting support as you're doing that are where the real work of boundary setting comes into play. So you now have all the tools. It's like we talk about with horses, you lay the good foundation and you could stay at the foundation forever because that's what it's all about. You revisit the foundation over and over and over again, but you have to start then practicing how to put those foundational pieces into use in different ways, more advanced settings, more advanced situations. So that's what 3 and 4 are about. And what I want to do is create, the group coaching is how I think I want to do it. I have found that the reason I think I want to do group coaching is after doing some of these classes, and Mary knows I've done others too, like the learning you guys get from each other and the sharing is sometimes the most valuable part of the class. I mean, it's so much richer when we get to hear each other's experiences and each other's way of talking about things. So I really like group coaching, and I think it adds a lot of value to it, but also the pricing per person can be less with group coaching than it is with private coaching. So, and I can serve a lot more people with my limited time than I can if I just do all one-on-one coaching. So I'm going to be creating a program. It's probably going to be like a monthly subscription program, and you can come in and stay in it as long as you want or leave it whenever you're done with it. And what I'm trying to figure out too is whether I want to do like weekly live coaching calls, bi-weekly or monthly. So I'd love for you 5 of you who are in the class and watching the recording back too, to think about that, whether or not you decide to go forward with more coaching or not, or with the group coaching, is if you were to, at this point, after having these 6 weeks of weekly, would you want to continue weekly? Would bi-weekly be good? Or would monthly be good as you start putting some of this stuff into practice? And the live calls would have a little bit of teaching, but a lot of it would just be like us talking through what's going on in life. What are the challenges? Where are you trying to implement boundaries, and what are your wins and what are your challenges? So yeah, and you could come onto the live calls, or those recordings will be shared too. So that part would be similar to how we do it here. And probably what I will do with the group coaching is, rather than a Facebook group, Mary knows this because she's already in the Kinship of the Herd, which is another membership program I have. I can create a membership site that actually has like a forum, and I can put resources in there, documents and things like that, because it wouldn't be a course like this was. It would be just ongoing topics and teaching things and resources for boundaries. So that's what I'm thinking. Let me see if I can figure out how to unshare. I stop sharing. That's what I'm thinking of for next steps. So if you have thoughts about that right now you want to share, you can, or you can get back to me later. Probably if I do that, I'm getting ready, like I said, in August to run another 6-week program. I think if I have the graduates from this one and the graduates from the next one, that would be a nice size group. There'd be enough people from those that probably wanted to go on to have a ongoing group coaching. So it won't start immediately. Give you a little time for you guys to practice what you've learned here. And then, I'll certainly be letting you know when that gets started, and have you consider it if you want it. But yeah, Mary?
Will the next class have the same format, or are you going to vary it some?
The next 6-week one I do? Yeah, this one's going to be basically the same class again with different people. Yeah, so you wouldn't want again in this same, well, I mean, you could, but probably it'd be the same class, just with a different group of people. You're welcome to do it again if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking? Yeah. And if you guys know anyone else who you think ought to know about the class that'll be starting in August, feel free to share, point them in the direction. Because once I get enough of a group and we start the grouping, the small group coaching that's ongoing, I probably will only run this intro with live. The self-paced course will always be up, but like live coaching with this, I may only do once or twice a year once I have a good, ongoing group of like small group coaching students. So yeah, and the price, you guys got in at the entry-level pilot price. It's going to go up even a little bit for this next one. So yay you guys for being the pioneers. Thank you. Well, I'm so proud of you guys, and congratulations, and thank you for investing in yourselves.
It was so meaningful to me to work on this with y'all. I'm so glad you did it live like this, because I was not doing much on my own.
Yeah, I was struggling. The live part really helped me as well.
Yeah, good.
And I think it was the right size, because I was going back to your question about like how often, because I have a study group that I was doing weekly, and we've gone to like every other week. And I would say that it's still going, but the momentum is a little bit harder.
Yeah.
With the biweekly?
With the biweekly. And I think that's one of the things that I love about how you structured the course, is that it wasn't overwhelming, right? Like each section was small enough that it was digestible, that you could kind of review it a couple times. It felt really good with the live component to keep that momentum going. I think if I had had more space in between, I don't know that I would have had the flow that I needed to kind of like keep the momentum.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I've had the same experience with courses. Weekly is a big commitment, but you don't always, if there's a week you can't show up, like it's okay, but you still have the recording and the momentum still going, and there's still the ongoing connection. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the other thing too, because I was feeling like those 2 weeks where I had to skip that, but I felt the recording was great, because that still helped me keep in the game.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank y'all for the feedback, and I'm
Thank you.
So proud of all of you. I love who you are and what you're doing, and just, yeah, keep up the great work. All right. See you guys soon.
Thank
Okay.
Thank
you all.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.